Welcome to the Improving Development Evaluation Podcast. I'm your host, David Wand, and in this episode, we're going to be revisiting another international development organization that I looked at previously called the Humber College International Development Institute. All the links for all the organizations I refer to, you can get in the episode notes, but I'll let you know right now. For the Humber College International Development Institute, you can learn more by going to their website at humber.ca/global/international development institute IDI. And if you ever want to get any of my performance measurement frameworks that I'm using for this podcast, as well as my critique of their performance measurement framework, PMF, you can email me at evaluatecanadaaid@gmail.com, and I'll put that email address and everything in the episode notes, and I'd be happy to send it to you. So let's begin with Humber College International Development Institute, and this project is being delivered at a cost of $2,008,800 to the Canadian taxpayer for a project that's being delivered in Kenya and Ethiopia. It's entitled STEM Education for Empowerment Project, or STEEP, STEEP, STEM Education for Empowerment Project. I will begin by giving you a brief description of the project, the target groups, and the services that those target groups receive. And then we'll get into looking at the more important evaluation design from the performance measurement framework. There are 9 expected outcomes they expect to achieve from delivering this $2 million worth of services. And they have 19 outcome indicators looking at measuring whether or not those 9 expected outcomes were actually achieved. That is, effectiveness or not. And I'll be looking at each of those 19 outcome indicators. So, starting with a brief description of the project, one of the target groups are adolescent girls in school, AGIS. They receive gender-sensitive STEM education that's delivered to them by teachers in their school. They also receive STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, or math, coaching, as well as STEM life skills training, and they also receive mentoring and also digital tools on STEM education related to the delivery of this coaching and mentoring in the STEM fields for these girls, adolescent girls in school. And they also receive, these adolescent girls in school, visits to STEM industries upon graduation. In the performance measurement framework, it's not clear if it's AGIS, adolescent girls in school, they're referring to. They just refer to project graduates in the PMF, but I'm assuming that's what they mean. So that's what these adolescent girls in school receive as a spectrum of services specific to STEM education. Another target group in the project are marginalized communities, and they receive fairs or events supporting gender equality in STEM fields. So they would attend these fairs or events. Another target group is families and community actors. They also receive workshops delivered to address girl stereotypes in STEM occupations. Another target group are adolescent boys, and they receive workshops delivered to them to increase their awareness of gender equality for girls in STEM occupations. There's also another target group that they call STEM Education for Empowerment Project, that's STEEP, champions. And the project recruits 24 of these STEEP champions to support the adolescent girls in school while they're interested in STEM as a career. Another target group are STEM teachers themselves in schools. They are trained on integrating information communication technology and how to deliver the gender-sensitive STEM education to the adolescent girls in school. Another target group are the technical vocation education training institutions. And for those institutions, the service that's being delivered is visits to these TVET institutions to deliver STEM career fairs about STEM courses. Another target group are adult girls out of school, or AGOOS, AGOOS. They also receive the same sort of STEM training that the adolescent girls in school receive. That is STEM training and STEM coaching, life skills training, business skills training. They also have visits where they're taken to these TVET institutions. They also have mentors recruited for them, and they also visit the STEM industries upon graduation. There's also another target group, community-based trainers, and they're trained on STEM education content and empowerment. That is the coaching, the life skills, and the business skills training. And finally, the last target group in this project are the STEM industry representatives. And for that target group, partnerships are established with them, the STEM industry representatives, and the project. It's not clear in the PMF, but I think it's between the project that Humber College International Development Institute is actually delivering, called STEEP, partnerships between them and the STEM industry representatives. So that gives you a rough background of the different target groups and the different services that are delivered. So it gives you an idea of the project. Now, before we get into looking at the 19 outcome indicators and seeing if they actually validly measure the achievement of the 9 expected outcomes, let's take a look at if you live in the Global South or if you are at the Humber College International Development Institute and you have to actually go to the Global South, that's Kenya, Ethiopia, to actually monitor this project or actually evaluate it by being involved in the data that's collected on the indicators, assuming the indicators in the first place are validly and properly designed. Because if they're not, you have garbage in, garbage out, and any data you produce is absolutely useless in answering the question as to whether or not the project has been effective in achieving its outcomes, right? But you're going to have to hopefully go, or maybe you won't, maybe just the project staff funded by Humber College that live in Kenya and Ethiopia in the Global South. You may want to check out some products that may be useful while you're in the field doing monitoring and evaluation. Sunglasses, akila.la, akila.la, and all of the links to get these discounts are provided in the episode notes. You can also get prescription lenses on these sunglasses from akila.la. They're all made from 50% recycled material. You get a 10% discount if you use my discount code that will be provided in the episode notes. And I get a 15% commission when you purchase any product using my link that's provided in the episode notes. So you have your sunglasses to protect you from the sun in the Global South, but you also need the right clothes to be comfortable in that what is usually hot and humid climate, or rainy at sometimes, depending on the rainy season, if you're there during the rainy season. And that is, how about some men's polo tees and button-ups at hypernaturalstyle.com. That's hypernaturalstyle.com. You get 20% off any product when you use my link, and I get a 20% commission on the total purchase you make when you use that promotional code. So you might be wondering what's so cool about this hypernatural.com stuff. They have a patent pending hypercool jade technology that, when it's hot, lowers your body temperature by 3 to 5 degrees. They are also breathable thanks to Supina cotton, and they are sold in premium retailers like Nordstrom, and were voted the best men's polo shirts in 2024 in Men's Journal, Forbes, and Esquire. And I've added another product line, which I think is really relevant to the Global South, especially if you're in the field, monitoring and evaluating any of these projects in the Global South. You can go to terrain.org, TORRAIN.org. And there you could purchase backpacks or totes or wallets or bags, which are perfect for traveling in the Global South. They're durable, lightweight, water resistant, perfect for travel and outdoor use if you are in the Global South, in the field, monitoring and evaluating a project. All terrain products are crafted from upcycled feed and rice bags sourced globally. Each bag's interior is lined with recycled plastic bottles, handcrafted by artisans supporting fair trade. By purchasing a terrain bag, customers contribute to global sustainability. You get 15% off any product if you use my link that is in the episode notes. It's mydeals.page/1HGL, but just check the link. It'll be in the notes. And I get a 15% commission of the total cart purchase. So there you have the background on the project and the three companies that I promote, which I think are directly relevant to the Global South and monitoring and evaluation. So now let's take a look at these outcome indicators. Project has 19 outcome indicators, 9 expected outcomes. The link to the project Global Affairs project browser, where you can get full details on this project if you wish, will be in the episode notes. So let's take a look at some of the expected outcomes for this project in Kenya and Ethiopia. The first outcome is increased access to STEM-related employment opportunities in STEM industries for adult girls out of school of working age in the targeted, marginalized communities. They have 2 outcomes indicators, for that outcome. First outcome indicator is percent of industry partners uploading job opportunities in the job hunting app. Now, my argument here is if you look at their outputs in the PMF, they have project staff that will contact the industry representatives in the STEM industries to upload the app. Do you really need Canadian taxpayers to pay these project staff to meet with local STEM industry representatives? Couldn't local Kenya and Ethiopian governments pay for this? So that's my issue there. Of course, you want to make sure they're involved in uploading the app, but it's not a lot of effort to upload an app. Could the governments basically help out with that? It's just an idea. The second indicator is number of meetings with STEM Mentor Network. So in the PMF, the project staff actually recruit mentors working in the STEM industries. Then project staff organize meetings with the girl students. Again, couldn't local governments pay local project staff to do this? It's again just an issue of dependency or not. Not really directly relevant here. And now my point being here is increased access to opportunities in the STEM fields is necessary, of course. But you could argue that this is an output rather than an outcome, because once they get access, the real issue is, did they actually get a job? Did their incomes actually go up? Those are expected outcomes. The app itself isn't really an outcome, but some people may argue, of course it's an outcome because it's in the immediate short term. You need to get the access before you get the STEM job. Not necessarily. You could still get a STEM job without the app being uploaded by these industry STEM reps. But anyway, that's my point there. The next outcome is increased awareness of the importance of young women's participation in STEM-related employment in the targeted marginalized communities. And they have, I think it is, let me see here, 2 outcome indicators for that increased awareness. First one is percent of target community members with positive attitudes to girls in the STEM industry. So, first, they've got it backwards. Yes, you can become aware of the importance, but once you become aware of the importance, you then hopefully will change your attitude. It'll become more positive towards girls working in the STEM industry. So, you can't equate increased awareness with an increase in positive attitude. But the indicator's good. The percent increase in awareness could happen without a corresponding increase in positive attitude. But if the end goal is to get that increase in positive attitude, we just need to look at it exactly how that positive attitude was measured. If it was validly measured, and that is the end goal, who cares about the awareness? So looking at the PMF, it looks like a good indicator, but then you have to look at the PMF to see exactly how they measure it. This percent is measured online through Kobo cell phone app and focus group discussions and key informant interviews. These three methods are ambiguous and questionable at getting at an accurate percent, right? We don't really know what sort of psychometric tool they're using to measure these positive attitudes. That's all they list in the PMF. And they say in the PMF, and I quote, baseline question, singular, on community support. So a single question does not seem to be a valid measure of positive attitude. So there should be a whole series of questions where a good psychometric measurement of positive attitude would be a series of questions. They measure on a spectrum of their attitude towards girls in STEM fields. Also, there's no mention of the sample size of this target group of community members. So that means we don't know. Also, there's no mention of the statistical analysis mentioned. This is a common problem if you listen to my other episode on GSurf, where they actually claim on their website that the percent on a particular outcome indicator increased, which is great, went up in the desired direction. Problem is they don't mention if that's a sample they took from a population or if it's actually the population. Because if it is the population, we should give them a break. Because if you have a small project to begin with and you're managing to measure every single one in the project, then you can claim it. But we just don't know. So they just have to mention here, is it a sample or is it the entire population of community members? I doubt it. I think it's a sample. The other problem, if you look at the PMF, is it's only measured once per year. So how do we know the project, not just simply over time by itself, was responsible for the percentage increase in the community members who had a positive attitude towards girls in the STEM industries? We just don't know. The percent increase could happen anyway by itself without the project even being delivered, right? So this is basic second year stats that any social science major would know. So you need to figure out, one, is it a sample from a population? I'm thinking yes, because it's a community. And number two, if it is, where's the sample size and where's the subsequent statistical analysis, which would be a normal distribution, one-tailed to the right, critical value of plus 1.645Z, right? Maybe it's too small and they can't assume it's a normal curve, then use a non-parametric test. Whatever, it should be in there. This mixed bag of Kobo versus focus group discussions versus key informant interviews doesn't really tell you the method that they used to come up with this percent. It is not clear. So I would argue it's not valid measure of this percent increase towards, and also the measurement itself of positive attitude, it's not clear. So that needs to be elaborated on in the PMF, and it's not there. Second indicator for increased awareness or increase in positive attitude is increased level of support from target community members on adolescent girls working in STEM. So if you take a look at the PMF on that, the methods of data collection they talk about for that outcome indicator are identical to the one I just described for the first outcome indicator. but there is no definition of, quote, increased level of support. So I would say delete it and stick with the good measure of positive attitude, but it needs to be developed, like I said earlier, with a battery of questions to be asked that better measures an increase in positive attitudes, since that is the end goal here. The next expected outcome from this project is, quote, enhanced STEM skills and work readiness of adult girls out of school in the targeted marginalized communities. They have two indicators for enhanced STEM skills. One is percent of adult girls out of school enrolled at the Community Youth Center complete training. Well, as we all know, enrollment does not equate with enhanced skills. Just because you show up and attend doesn't mean you got the skills. So obviously that's not going to work. It certainly shows they are ready to work, but we want to see an increase in STEM skills. The second indicator is increased confidence level of adult girls out of school to land, access, an economic opportunity after training completion. Now, same goes for increased confidence in getting a job after graduation. But first, let's make sure that those who completed the training were actually measured on their STEM skill acquisition, right? This is a clear example of outcome indicators failing to validly measure the outcome of, quote, enhanced STEM skills, right? They got to measure it. And they're in school or they're in some sort of training, so it can be done. So they're not valid measures of enhanced STEM skills. The next expected outcome is, quote, enhanced capacity of secondary schools to provide gender responsive and equitable, culturally and environmentally sensitive STEM education for adolescent girls in the targeted marginalized communities. They have two indicators for this expected outcome. First one is percent of secondary schools providing STEM in a gender responsive, culturally, environmentally sensitive manner. So to measure this properly, you need to go into the classroom and observe the teachers with a checklist to make sure the STEM curriculum delivered does indeed cover, quote, gender equity, environment sensitivity to the girls. The PMF does not do this. Instead, they just review school records, which is too late, and no proof that the curriculum content was actually delivered. So you don't look at school records. So again, this is the beauty of getting the performance measurement framework. Without the PMF, you don't know how they actually go about measuring the indicator. But I've got the PMF and it says clearly, we're not going to go ask the girls. We're going to look at school records. Even asking the teachers is biased. So what they should do instead of just reviewing the school records, which is too late and no proof that the curriculum content was actually observed, a better way would be to ask the girl students directly a series of questions, such as, for your STEM content, did your teacher tell you that girls can do STEM just as good as boys? Because it's all about gender sensitivity, sensitive to girls being able to enter STEM fields, right? That's just an example. That's what they should do instead. So I would say this indicator is not a valid measure of enhanced capacity. Because capacity to what? Did they actually deliver the content, gender sensitive STEM content to the students? That's what you want them to do, right? Have the capacity to do that. Did they do it? And you don't know from the way they're measuring it here. The second indicator is, it's a little closer, percent of teachers delivering enhanced STEM subjects, training, pedagogy, right? So according to the PMF, this percent is achieved by doing a, quote, teaching assessment. But how is this assessment done? It is done once a year. So they go in and they look at the teacher and they do the assessment. But if you want to deliver the enhanced STEM content to girls running, based on this pedagogy they've been trained on, once a year is too late, right? Even if this assessment is done by going into the classroom to observe, we don't know. Let's assume it is. To observe and make sure the teacher is delivering this gender sensitive STEM education to girl students. It is only done once a year. That is not frequent enough to ensure that the teachers actually delivered the gender sensitive STEM content to the girl students. So it's another example of an indicator that doesn't validly measure enhanced capacity of secondary schools to deliver the gender responsive and equitable, culturally, environmentally sensitive STEM education for adolescent girls in the targeted, marginalized communities, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Next expected outcome, increased awareness of the importance of educating adolescent girls in STEM in the targeted, marginalized communities, particularly among caregivers, parents, adolescent boys, young men, and key community actors. Two indicators there. Percent of target community members with positive attitudes towards girls in STEM education. And again, like I said earlier, you can't equate increased awareness with increase in positive attitude, but that's okay. As I mentioned earlier, if the end goal is positive attitude, that's good. So we can just look at that. And if it's validly measured, and that is the end goal, who cares about the awareness? So again, the same problem as I mentioned before. If you look at the PMF, this percent is measured online. So you don't get a valid representative sample if you're doing it online through the Kobo cell phone. Although I suppose they get a text message on their cell phones, and then you have to hope they're going to reply to the survey through their Kobo cell phone software, right? But also they throw in focus group discussions and they throw in key informant interviews. So it's the same problem I mentioned before. It's ambiguous, questionable how they get this accurate percent. And again, they have the same problem. They say the PMF states, and I quote, baseline question on community support. A single question doesn't seem to be a valid measure of this positive attitude. No mentioning of the sampling to get this percent, if it is a sample, or if I think it is. It's the same as what I described earlier. So that indicator is not a valid measure of whether or not the percent of the community members' positive attitude increased over time. There's no statistical analysis to show that it's not a random percent from the sample rather than being shifted to the right with a percent increase. We just don't know. The second indicator is increased level of support from target community members on educating adolescent girls. Same thing, same problem as before that I mentioned. Method of data collection is the same, so it's not a valid measure. The next expected outcome is enhanced knowledge, attitudes, and skills of adolescent girls in school in STEM subjects in the targeted, marginalized communities. They have two indicators for this expected outcome. The first one is increased academic performance of adult girls in school in STEM subjects in the targeted, marginalized communities. According to the PMF, the data source is, quote, school records and national data. This is only done once a year, so one could easily experience an increase in knowledge or skill or attitude change over time just by itself without the project. There is no explanation how these skill or knowledge levels will be measured, although I suspect a test on adolescent girls in school is done. These test results need to be shown. Also, there is no mention of a measure of attitude for this outcome. School record is too vague as a data source. So they need to be more precise about how they're going to measure increased academic performance. The second indicator on this enhanced knowledge, attitudes, and skills on STEM subjects is the percent of adult girls in school participating in STEM activities. As you know, participation or attendance does not equal an increase in knowledge or skill acquisition. So it's clearly, or a change in attitude, clearly is not a valid measure of enhanced knowledge or attitudes or skills. So that those are not valid indicators. The next expected outcome is enhanced gender equitable participation of adolescent girls out of school for marginalized communities in the targeted regions of Kenya and Ethiopia in STEM-related employment. Now, the indicators, there's two indicators here. First one is percent of working age adult girls out of school secured STEM-based income generation. Now, that sounds really good. If you've been listening to any of my episodes where they keep talking about vocational skills training and then income generation, but they never measure the incomes. So this has great potential, as the PMF shows that follow-up with the adolescent girls out of school is going to be done. So that's excellent to see if they've, quote, secured a STEM-based income generation. But even if the percent that report yes, that is insufficient. Why? Because they may just say yes, but they need to actually measure their STEM-based income, right? Show me the money. This percent is only measured once a year. Now, if they're doing all this effort, doing tracer studies, tracking them, following them up, these adolescent girls out of school after they've got their wonderful training in STEM, instead, they should track STEM-based income, calculate median income for all adolescent girls out of school, or take a sample, in the project every 3 months. The percent reporting is useless in showing STEM-related income being achieved, right? You can't just say percent, getting a job in STEM-based industries. That's good, but it's not good enough, especially when I haven't looked at the data source here. What did I report? Show me the money is more important. But the percent of them working in the STEM-based industries would be good also. But again, I don't see the statistical analysis that shows that that percent increase is statistically significant rather than just a random sample, or it's the entire population they survey. They could, it would be expensive, but they could follow up, with each one of them that graduates. It's not clear from the PMF. The second indicator is the percent of adult girls out of school reporting positive experience from community members when seeking to pursue STEM-related livelihoods, right? So here, what they're doing here is they're indirectly asking the girls if the community they went into had a positive attitude towards them. So it's an indirect measure of positive attitude from the community towards these girls. It is only measured once a year and is done again online and via focus group discussions and via key informant interviews, which are not valid measures of changes in this percentage. Instead, they should sample the girls directly and question them, or even better, sample the community population directly and measure their attitude. So again, it's not a valid measure for those reasons. It's not measured frequently enough either. They could change those attitudes or have those positive experiences go up anyway between once a year when they measure it, right? So that's another problem. Next expected outcome, enhanced gender equitable participation of adolescent girls in school. So this is the other target group from marginalized communities in the targeted regions of Kenya and Ethiopia in STEM education through tertiary academic pathways, or TVET, technical vocation education training. So two indicators there: percent of girls in school enrolled in further STEM courses. This is good, valid measure of increased female participation in STEM education through showing no dropout and even continued interest in STEM by girls. The only challenge is showing that the project is better at this by having a higher percent enrolled in STEM courses compared to other girls not participating in the project. So even if the percent goes up in enrollment, how does it compare to another part of the country where they don't have this steep project? Now, they could argue, Humber, this is a national project. We're blanketing the earth. We've covered the whole country. I don't know. So that's the only thing I raised there. The second indicator is the percent of adolescent girls in school reporting positive experience from community members when seeking to pursue higher education in STEM. And this is where I would prefer they have a self reporting bias due to social desirability to say yes, it has been a positive experience. Instead, they should just go straight to the community members, sample them directly with a good measure of positive attitudes specific to STEM and girls being in STEM fields, right? So it's not a very good measure. Should stay away from the girls, ask the community members directly. There's another one, and that's the percent of adolescent girls using further STEM education gains for self development. Now, in the PMF, it is, quote, self perception of gender suitability for STEM reported by the girls. In the data collection method they just mentioned, again, online survey plus focus group discussions plus key informant interviews done once a year. This is not good enough as a psychometric tool measuring self perceptions over time, and frequently would be best to show that the project was responsible for increasing these positive self perceptions by the girls, right? So they need to measure more frequently. That's the problem there, not just once a year. Could go up anyways. Just by being in the project, they feel great, but you have to do it more than just once a year. And again, we need to know, is it a sample or is it a population where they measured everybody in the project? Same issues of before. The next outcome is enhanced gender equality and empowerment of adolescent girls from marginalized communities in the regions of Addis Ababa and Kisumu in Kenya. So that maybe suggests right there that they don't do it national wide, which is good. So they could go to another area of Ethiopia, another area of Kenya, and measure adolescent girls in school and adult girls out of school. Those two groups, measure them on the same indicators and see if there's a difference. In the PMF, the target is 50% of the girls have graduated or completed STEEP empowerment training. This is different than the measurement, which again is a self-perception survey. Again, the target percent is a good indicator, but they need to compare it to a group of girls that did not participate in the project. However, just seeing an increase in this percent in graduation would seem to be good enough, at least when it comes to livelihood gains. But again, as I mentioned earlier, ideally what you want to see is employment rather than just graduated or completed the training, correct? So enhanced gender equality and empowerment should not be just graduation. That's not good enough. So I'm correcting myself right here. I don't think it's a good indicator of enhanced gender empowerment. Definitely not. Enhanced gender empowerment is employment in the STEM field and increase in the median income once you're employed in the STEM field, right? That's really a better measure of enhanced gender equality and empowerment. The second indicator is percent of adolescent girls with increased level of agency in pursuing STEM-related education and or employment. Now, the PMF says data is to be determined, but they should track these project girls on the percent of them that graduate in STEM and their median income specific only to STEM work. You could argue that if they have agency, the capacity to act, that they will be successful in graduating, as well as securing income from STEM work, at least the former, graduating, right? Increased agency is not a valid measure of, quote, enhanced economic empowerment. So there you have it. There's a review of the performance measurement framework. And as you can tell from my description, most of the outcome indicators are not valid measures of the expected outcomes of the project. They cannot really conclude that they've achieved their outcomes because simply they haven't properly designed the outcome indicators to properly measure whether or not the outcome has been achieved. And even in the rare cases where the indicator does look good, they haven't done the proper statistical analysis to at least show this is a population. We've got everybody. So if the percent goes up, it's a valid measure. We've achieved the outcome. No, there's no mention of that in the performance measurement framework. So either way, the entire project cannot claim they've achieved their outcomes because either one, the outcome indicators don't validly measure the outcome, or number two, even if they do, they haven't explained whether it's the entire population of the target group that's being measured. And if not, did they do the sampling? And they haven't shown they're doing a one-tailed test to the right with a normal distribution, or alternatively, a non-parametric test to show that the percent increase, if it has gone up, is statistically significantly increased rather than just random. So, in conclusion, I would say that because of the poor evaluation design, they cannot make the claim for $2 million that they're achieving the outcomes. So, again, as before, I will send this to the Secretary of State responsible for international development in Ottawa, the federal government, Global Affairs Canada, as well as copying the shadow critics from the Conservative Party, Bloc Québécois, New Democratic Party, forgot everybody, on this so that they're well aware of this problem. And I'll also include the link in my email to this episode of the podcast. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.